Hi guys, it's Mary from Hail Mary Food of Grace. And confession, I taped a whole video and it didn't record. So this is the second time I'm actually taping this video. So hopefully it's as good as the first time, and actually hopefully it's better. As I promised you guys, I was gonna do videos on Tuesday and Thursday, and it's based on your cooking questions. And I was so grateful because I had 3 great people who sent in really great questions. And anyway, without further ado, let's talk about our first question. One wonderful person wrote in and asked me about cooking temperatures of meat, how to tell if steaks or red meats are done without a thermometer. And what I will tell you is that it is just through trial and error, but I'm going to teach you how to do good trial and error. When I was in culinary school, I had a chef, and I told him that I was certainly uneasy about cooking different meats, and I wasn't sure how to get the right temperature. And so he grabbed me by the hand and he took out about 20 sirloin steaks that were all pretty evenly sized and weighted. And he threw them all on a grill. And what we did was we checked on like a few at 6 minutes, a few at 7.5 minutes, a few at 8 minutes, and a few at 10 and 12 minutes. So what we noticed was that at about 6 minutes, with the size of these steaks, when a steak is at a rare temperature on the inside, you'll see a lot of clear moisture that starts rising from the top, that'll be really, really soft to the touch. It won't have that glossy, beautiful look that it gets as it goes into medium rare. And so that's what you're looking for your rare. It's really, really soft. There's just a little bit of clear liquid that's coming out through the top and the sides, but not very much. It just looks a little bit glossy. Now, as you go into 7.5 to 8 minutes, you're going to find that your steak goes into a more medium rare. And the ways you can tell, our telltale sign, is that the juices will actually start coming up through the pores, and you'll see little specks of red juices that bead up on the top. Now, this is your first indication that your steak is moving from rare into medium rare. It's very noticeable once you know what to look for. When the steak is moving on from medium rare to medium, those red juices, instead of being little dots on top, are actually going to pool on top. And then you can understand that all of those juices are being pushed out of the steak because of the heat, and they're collecting on top of the steak. The steak at this point, it's going to become more firm. I always like to rotate the steak on both sides because typically if a steak is burner side down, the meat's going to be tougher. It's going to feel more sturdy than the one on top that's not touching the direct heat. As you get into well done or medium well, what's going to happen is all of those red juices are actually going to fall off the steak altogether. The steak is going to shrink in size because all those proteins are going to shrink it. And the juices, you'll see the juices if you're cooking it in the oven because they'll all be on the pan. And if it's on the grill, you won't notice that as much, but you will hear fire ups and flame ups in the grill because the juices will be sparking the flames on the inside. Once you remove your steak for whatever consistency or whatever temperature that you want on the inside, people talk about resting their meat. This is actually a really good time for you to pull off your steak and allow it in 2 to 3 minutes to raise in temperature. So if you really want it just at the edge of rare, you can pull it off kind of right at that point where the beads are starting to collect on top, but just barely. And you can rest it for about 5 minutes, and actually it'll push it over into the very beginning stages of medium rare, which is that red warm center. Super delicious. My parents really love to put foil over the top of steaks. And what I will say to you is that is completely acceptable, but just know that you're actually increasing the temperature inside of the steak. And so it's actually going to cook it more like 5 or 6 degrees or 6 to 7 degrees inside, rather than just those 2 to 3 degrees that you're looking for. So if you really undercooked your steak and you really want it to sit and raise in temperature, that's a really good way to do it. Another great tip is if you feel like you've made the perfect steak, remove it from the pan that you cooked it in and put it onto another plate that's warm but not as scalding hot as the pan that you used to cook it. And again, because what will happen is the steak will continue to raise in temperature on the inside. So you're pushing your steak from whatever you originally wanted, and you're moving it out of that into the next category. So that was a great question. If you feel like you have more to say or want to tell me that you don't agree with me, or that you do agree with me and you love what I have to say, please share that in the comments. If you have more questions based on what I just shared, please, again, share in the comments, send me a message. I'm going to move on to our next question. This came from another person from my Facebook page, from Hail Mary Food of Grace. And the question is, what about cooking oils? How do you know what cooking oil to use? And I think this is a really great question. Most people don't have any idea what they're supposed to do with oils, and they listen and they read and they hear about, what the temperature, what am I trying to say? I'll get there, or maybe I won't. But there's a point where oil just can't surpass. And the oils that can reach really high temperatures, those are your canola oils, your grapeseed oils, your peanut oils. Peanut oils can get ridiculously hot without breaking down. And you have to decide what you want to use. Now there's something also that I like to use when I'm cooking, and that's like an extra light virgin olive oil. It's so light, in fact, that it's kind of comparable to like a canola oil. It's a Bertolli light. I think it's extra virgin light olive oil. Anyway, if you looked at it in comparison to a vegetable oil, actually the color is very similar. So that's what I like to use, but I'm not cooking anything that's crazy hot typically in my kitchen, because I don't like to smoke out my kitchen, because my fire alarm goes off and it's just a mess. So in my home kitchen, I don't typically cook foods on crazy hot temperatures. Now, when I worked in the restaurant world, I didn't care, and we just, we seared like crazy, and we smoked out the kitchen like crazy with all the searing that we were doing. Super hot temperatures creates really great crust. So clearly in a restaurant kitchen, we wanted the best. But in my home kitchen, I don't do that. But so with like a canola oil, with a extra light virgin olive oil, with a nonstick spray, stuff like that, the best way is to lightly coat. Well, first of all, make sure your meats are always dried, and then you're going to lightly coat your meats. Depending on if I'm going to add vegetables to the pan, I will sometimes add the oil into the pan with the meat, especially if I want a really nice edge on the meat. I will sometimes add oil. If I don't care about that and I just want the actual meat or the protein seared, the best way to do it is to dry the meat really well, or fish or chicken, whatever you're doing, dry it really well. And then, I'm not gonna lie, I actually use nonstick spray, sometimes like a canola spray, just to minimize how much oil I use and to really get a good coating. But if that's not what I'm looking for in flavor, If I want to have a little bit more flavor, like if I want to use peanut oil, because that actually has a lot of flavor, then I would, again, use that same step of drying off the protein, but I would lightly add the peanut oil onto the meat so that you give a little extra flavor, and of course you can give it, cook it in a really hot temperature. However, with peanut oil, there's always the risk of an allergen, so don't cook it for company if you don't know of what their allergies are. So again, those are my ideas. Now, if you're going to use extra virgin olive oil, something that I like to do is if I buy a really beautiful, earthy, nutty olive oil that's very expensive, like somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20, sometimes I like to finish chicken with it, and I'll put like a little dollop of olive oil on chicken after everything is done, or vice versa with salad. Sometimes I'll use like a canola oil or grapeseed oil, and then I will add in the really nice olive oil at the very end for a finishing touch, just because the flavor is so amazing, and it adds so much to the salad. As far as veggies, again, I go with the same idea that you use with meats. A little bit goes a long way. If you're broiling, just make sure not to add too much olive oil to the pan. Otherwise, it's going to get smoky and things are going to pop as moisture releases from the vegetables onto the pan, which again, that's what creates all the crazy smoke that can seep out through your oven. As far as potatoes, I love just an easy, light, extra light olive oil, sometimes a canola oil mix. And then I season it with salt and pepper, and then I add it onto a sheet pan that has been lightly coated with nonstick spray. And the reason, again, for the nonstick spray on the pan is to prevent the potatoes from sticking, but not creating so much oil in the pan that you create the smoke or it starts popping when moisture leaps out of the potatoes onto the pan. So those are two really great questions. Again, if you have more questions that came from the answers to the question I gave, I would absolutely love to hear your ideas, your thoughts. I can hear my kids upstairs. They need to go to bed. I need to put them to bed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, my next episode is on Tuesday and Thursday of next week. And if you have any questions that you want to know, please hit me up on my private message on my Instagram. Also, don't forget to follow me on Hail Mary Food of Grace, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook. Go to my website for the most latest recipes. Find my recipes at traditionalhome.com. Great Gatherings is the section. There are a million different great recipes in there. And don't forget to share me with your friends. Anyway, off I go. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.